I'm Rabbi Jeremy Kreidel from Machar, and welcome to our Yom Kippur Day service for 2021, the Jewish calendar year 5782. We come together to mark a moment that Jews have traditionally viewed as Norah va'ayom, awesome and fearful, when for centuries prior generations looked to the consequences of their actions. On Yom Kippur, this introspection reaches its climax. All through the year, we seek others' forgiveness for the wrongs we have committed against them, and we seek to forgive ourselves for times when we feel we have fallen short. On Yom Kippur, we focus on that work and make it our priority. Jewish tradition says that Yom Kippur is a kind of dress rehearsal for death, a common fate we all share. In the words of the poet John Donne, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. The Talmud says, Kol Yisrael Aravim zeh bazeh, all Israel is bound up, one with the other. We acknowledge our connections with one another in this community, and with all those who seek peace, regardless of their culture or place of origin, and join in this greeting together as we sing the song Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShalom, Shomrei Shalom. Shalom Aleichem, Rodvei HaShalom, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShalom, Shomrei Shalom. Shalom Aleichem, Rodvei HaShalom, Shalom Aleichem. Boachem l'shalom, Ohavei HaShalom, Tzedchem l'shalom. Miyom zeh leyamim habayim, Shalom Aleichem. Boachem l'shalom, Ohavei HaShalom, Tzedchem l'shalom. Miyom zeh leyamim habayim, Shalom Aleichem.
And the song, translated as we sing it here, means peace to you who love peace, keepers of peace to you pursuers of peace. Come in peace, you who love peace, and depart in peace from this day and in all the days to come. Peace to you. The idea being that we expand our scope of concern to anybody who values peace, and not only Jews, and not only for Shabbat, which is when Shalom Aleichem is, in its traditional form, ordinarily sung. If you haven't lit candles yet for the holiday, you're welcome to do that now, and I'll recite the blessings for you. The blessing that we use is Nivarech et haor ba'olam, Nivarech et haor ba'adam, Nivarech et haor ba'yom tov. Let us bless the light in the world. Let us bless the light in humanity. Let us bless the light of the holiday. Just as candles radiate warmth and illumination, so too may we. Just as our forebears kindled such flames for themselves and us, so too may we shine our lights for present generations and those yet to come. A poem attributed to Kalidasa entitled, Look to This Day. Look at this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the realities and verities of existence, the bliss of growth, the splendor of action, the glory of power. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. And it's an important challenge to consider focusing on today because today is literally Yom Kippur, right? The Day of Atonement. And so it makes sense to stop and take a moment and not just mark the fact that it's a holiday, but mark the day and the purposes of the day. And as we do that, we affirm our beliefs in part by singing the song Efa Ori, which was written by Humanistic Judaism's founder, Rabbi Sherwin Wein, and will be led by the Machar choir.
Efa Ori, Ori, Bi, Efa Tikva, Tikva, Tibi, Efa Kohi, Kohi, Bi, Vegam Bach, Efa Kohi, Kohi, Bi, Vegam Bach, Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
And we share this reading inspired by the traditional Ve'ahavta from Deuteronomy chapter 6, written by Rabbi Benjamin Biber. Let us encounter all the world with appreciative and insightful love, deep and healing love, liberating and joyful love. Let us rejoice in love and the fertility it brings to the human experience. Love expands our abilities to explore and express ourselves. Love deepens our feelings of connectedness and individuality. Love helps us reach across the boundaries of ego, class, creed, ethnicity, and nation. Love heightens our senses of meaning, beauty, and wonder. Let us love all the world with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our might. And these words will be upon our heart always. Let us learn them by heart with our children, and let us speak them often, as we sit in our homes and walk along the way, as we lie down and rise up. Let us attach them as a sign to our minds and our hands. Let us write them on mezuzot in our home as lessons. Let us make our every deed a labor of love. Let it be words of love that we speak and live by, not words of gossip, ill will, or cruelty, not words of lashon hara, the evil tongue. Since the temple stood in Jerusalem, Jews in a standing position, Amidah, have idealized qualities they attributed to their ancestors and deity. Whether literally or in spirit, please stand now to proclaim our shared ideals and our will to act upon them in this Amidah, written by Rabbi Benjamin Biber. Let us remember those who have come before us, who have given us life, love, and our culture, such as our Zikaron Chazdei Imot V'Avot, our remembrance of the kindness and merits of our mothers and fathers. Let us work together in mutual aid to benefit all. May we thus advance mutuality, Gemilut Chasadim, our best response to being parts of a vast and interdependent world. Let us be thankful for all that sustains us, for all that gives us contentment and joy, compassion and understanding. May our efforts help bring such well-being to all who live on earth. Let us work for peace, shalom, in our relationships, our communities, and our world. Let us recognize and celebrate our differences to better live together on this one planet. Let us work to heal the sick and sustain health, to give to the weary strength and life renewed, to support those who have fallen, to uplift those bowed down, to free those in bondage, to abolish both greed and poverty, to repair and improve the world. Hava na'avod l'rapeh cholim u'lechalkel briut, latet la'ayev koach v'chaim mechudeshet, lismoch noflim, lezakef kefufim, lahatir asurim, levatel gam betza v'gam oni, letakem et ha'olam. Traditionally, in the Amidah, there is a section that seeks to petition for healing for those who are ill. We know that illness can take many forms, and we hope for healing as each person needs it when they need it. And so at this moment, we just bring to mind those for whom full healing will not come. And we take a moment to remember those who need healing, as well as those who provide help, essential services, and healing at this moment, one that is dangerous to the helped and the helper alike. May those in need of healing come to renewal of body and of spirit, and let us say, Shalom. As we turn our attention to the work of restoration, both in relationships with one another and within ourselves, as we come to the real work of the Day of Atonement of Yom Kippur, we'll hear the call of the shofar to draw our attention to the weighty tasks at hand. And there is a story about Rabbi Israel Salanter, who was the founder of the movement that is often called the Machar movement, which means Musar means correction. So it's a Jewish ethical movement that developed in Eastern Europe in the mid-1800s. And Rabbi Israel Salanter once spent the night at a shoemaker's home, the story goes. And late at night, he saw a man working by the light of the flickering candle, and he says to the shoemaker, "Look how late it is. Your candle is about to go out. Why are you still working?" And the shoemaker replied, "As long as the candle is burning, it is still possible to mend." And for weeks afterward, Rabbi Salanter was heard repeating the shoemaker's words to himself. As long as the candle is burning, it is still possible to mend. As long as the candle burns, as long as the spark of life still shines, we can mend and heal, seek forgiveness and reconciliation, and begin again. We know we have fallen short, but we also know it is still possible to mend. We call upon the shofar to stir the spark of introspection, to urge us to search ourselves for our regrets, while the spark of life still shines. Let the tekiah strike our ears. Shvarim, our complacency is broken. We respond to the alarm, teruah. For this moment will pass all too soon, tekiah. I have seen violence scar the face of our planet, yet I did not speak. I have heard cries of hungry children, yet I did not speak. I have seen poverty and diseases, yet I did not speak. I have witnessed the pain and suffering of others, yet I did not speak. I have wanted to scream out in rage against injustice, yet I did not speak. I, too, have been in pain, yet I did not speak. I have wanted to laugh with joy, yet I did not speak. I have wanted to share words of love, yet I did not speak. Yet there were times of outrage, pain, and joy when I did speak. May I always have the courage to speak what must be spoken, and may we always have the courage to speak what must be spoken. And as we consider that idea that we've lost opportunities to make things right, we have to ask as well, what are the things that we need to speak? We have to acknowledge our shortcomings as individuals and as a community, and the idea that not all are to blame, but that we might all be responsible. Judaism has traditionally done this on Yom Kippur, this introspection and thought, and saying what needs to be said, through viduyim, confessional texts, and piyutim, which are poetry and songs on the themes of the holiday. And so we share this vidui adapted from Gates of Repentance. Our misdeeds constitute a veritable alphabet of unethical behaviors, the offense of arrogance, bigotry, and cynicism, of deceit and egotism, flattery and greed. We were haughty, pursued injustice, and indulged our jealousy. Some of us kept grudges, were liars, malicious, or narrow-minded. Others were obstinate or possessive, quarrelsome, rancorous, or selfish. There was thoughtlessness, unkindness, violence, weakness of will, xenophobia. We yielded to temptation and were zealous for questionable ends. And as we consider the things that we need to improve on, the things that we may have caused, and the things that we're responsible for, we join together in singing Tzrichim Anachnu, which is a humanistic adaptation of the traditional melody of Avinu Malkeinu, and will be led in that by the Machar choir. translate that, tzrichim anachnu, as we need to purify our hearts, for we have not done enough good deeds. May righteousness and loving kindness be with us, and lead to mutual deliverance from harm. And we share as well the poem Because, adapted from Mishkan HaNefesh for Yom Kippur. Because I was angry, because I didn't think, because I was exhausted and on edge, because I can be mean, because I was reckless and selfish, because I was worried about money, because my marriage was dead, because other people were doing it, because I thought I could get away with it, because I did something wrong. We now enter our Nizkor, our memorial service, and share this idea, this discussion, this meditation on the idea of memory by Rabbi Miriam Jairus. Zachor means remember. We are condemned to remember. It is the very nature of the human condition. Because we remember, we have culture. Because we remember, we have tradition. Because we remember, we are able to learn from our past. Even if we wanted to stop remembering, it would insist on intruding. We cannot be the creatures of our evolutionary past who live from moment to moment without the assault of conscious memory. Our past stays with us vividly. We must learn how to live with it. The Yizkor service is a customary part of many Jewish holidays. The word itself is derived from the beginning lines of a prayer, Yizkor Elohim Nishmat, may God remember the soul of. As humanistic Jews, it makes more sense to refer to this important part of our tradition as Nizkor, let us remember. Each of us remembers our traditions in our own way. It is through our actions today that we build our own legacy. Our traditions will be preserved and passed on to new generations. Their memories will be shaped by our present. We are children of the past, we are parents of the future. If we dwell too much on the past, we shall neglect the future. But we cannot only look forward, or we will forget the lessons that history provides. We are always the bridge between the past and the future. We stretch between the old and the new. We do not betray the future by ignoring our roots. We pay tribute to both. We mentioned that Yizkor, Nizkor, that the idea of this kind of service is bound up with Jewish tradition. And in fact, it's worth mentioning that it's bound up with a specific version of Jewish tradition, that the Yizkor service, what we do now, the extended memorial service of Yom Kippur, is very tightly tied into Eastern European Ashkenazi Jewish traditions. That this is not a universal Jewish tradition, even though we perceive it as such, because it is so common in many American congregations and many U.S. and Canadian congregations to have this kind of service. That there's a special kind of connection to tradition, connection to the past, that this kind of service brings, and that it's worth remembering that not everything in Jewish life is actually universal, and not everything in Jewish life is the same everywhere. And so the Yizkor, the Nizkor service is something that is really particular as a development of Ashkenazi Judaism. And so we take a moment to remember all victims of oppression. There are things in Jewish history too terrible to be believed, but not too terrible to have happened. Let us honor the martyrs of the Holocaust in Europe and of all the other Holocausts unleashed on the innocent of this world. In their memory, we reaffirm our commitment to freedom and peace. And this is an excerpt from the poem The Jewish Ghetto at Łódź by Harold Black. If you choose to live, there is music to hide the rumbling of your empty stomach. Bronislava plays her violin in the House of Culture. In Soup Kitchen No. 2, Steinman the tenor sings. Or you can trade on the black market your last tablecloth or sheet for a loaf of bread. But there are times when you do not choose. A notice is tacked to your door. Fate has chosen you to ride the train. We will remember. To forget is a crime against memory. Last year, Machar joined the immigrant advocacy organization, the Congregation Action Network, and adopted a statement in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. These causes are our causes, as humanism demands that we recognize that others' losses are our losses too. We share a litany for those who aren't ready for healing. By Dr. Yolanda Pierce. Let us be silent when we don't know what to say. Let us be humble and listen to the pain, rage, and grief pouring from the lips of our neighbors and friends. Let us decrease so that our brothers and sisters who live on the underside of history may increase. Let us listen to the shattering glass and let us smell the purifying fires, for it is the language of the unheard. Let us mourn black and brown women and men, those killed extrajudicially every 28 hours. Let us lament the loss of a teenager dead at the hands of a police officer who described him as a demon. Let us call for the mourning men and the wailing women, those willing to rend their garments of privilege and ease, and sit in the ashes of this nation's original sin. And as we reflect on the work to be done to correct a history of persecution through our own government, we call on the shofar again. Sound the shofar to stir us to work for justice. Sound the shofar so that we not only remember but act. Send up the alarm that alerts us to the brokenness of our world, so that we may work to make it more whole with a single shout of Tekiah. Teruah, Shavarim, Tekiah. We also take time during the Nizkor service to remember personal losses. Each of us is more than an individual. We are members of a living people. Our lives stretch back into the past and they reach forward into the future. As we dream of tomorrow, we do not forget our yesterdays. We remember our loved ones who have died. So long as we live and remember, they too shall live. And we take a moment of silence to remember those we carry in our hearts. Zecher tzadikim livracha. May the memory of good people be a blessing for us, and may the memory of those we loved in life sweeten our thoughts and our deeds. Part of the challenge of mourning those that we miss is that our pasts are tied up with people who are gone, and our present and our future are still tied up with them in a lot of ways. And so we remember people at odd moments, we remember people at all manner of moments. And so we share this poem, We Remember Them, by Sylvia Kamens and Rabbi Jack Reamer. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now part of us, as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have achievements based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember them. Part of the challenge of a memorial service of any kind, whether it's at the cemetery or now during Yom Kippur, sometimes at a great distance in time from when we've lost somebody, is that it's hard and it's frightening to think about the idea that we ourselves may be gone, that we share a common fate. So we have a song by Leah Morris inspired by a poem by Machar member Renee Weitzner. The song is called Dust. And after the song plays, we'll share Renee's original poem.
Why are you wiping up the dust? Why do you want it gone away? Isn't it just pieces of us that slough off as we make our way? Why are we so afraid of dust? Cleaning the tables and the shelves. Thus ends the tale of each of us. It's time we reckon with ourselves. That we are dust. We are dust. We're only here for a minute. Then time will swipe us from the page, and earth will shake us off her sleeve. And in a while there'll be no trace of all we've worshipped and believed. But maybe an echo in the wind. Maybe some spirit calls us home. Or do we lay down in the dirt, fully aware, fully alone? We are dust. We are dust. We're only here for a minute. Is there a signpost? Is there some last hope that could keep us going on? Our fate is written in the dust. Even if science finds a way, and through its fleeting life calls us to make the best of every day. Well, we all must. We all must make the best while we're in it. We're only here for a minute.
Leah Morris's song is inspired by the poem Dust by Machar member Renee Weitzner, who in turn wrote the poem in memory of longtime Machar member Henrietta Wexler. Dust is everywhere. Can't escape it no matter how hard I try. Questions arise like dust, sometimes without answers. Why do we object to it so much? Does it enter our bloodstream? Does it enter our DNA? What harm can it do? Is it safe for us to breathe? Why do we want to wipe it away and quickly? Where does it come from? What could we do with it that we are not doing? Where we are going, we will undoubtedly return to that state of dust. When we object to dust, what are we really saying? What really scares us? Our mortality? Our end? The fact that we will all end up as dust? Possibly. Probably. If there is some kind of consolation in knowing that we will be gone, perhaps some of it is that in a way we have never belonged to us. And so we shared this poem, You Do Not Belong to You, by Marcia Falk, reminding us that we belong to so much more than us. You belong to the universe, and you will be reclaimed by its constant, ever-changing heart, your wise body and your spacious mind, when you are joyful or not, whether you are ready or not, even as you turn away to be buffeted and set aloft, a twig in the wind. As we start to reach the end of our Nizkor service, our memorial service, we share this mourner's Kaddish. Nitkadal v'nitkadash beruach ha'adam. Let us enhance and exalt ourselves in the spirit of humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May healing and peace permeate and comfort all of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. And as part of our determination to honor those who have gone before, we reaffirm our commitment to work for peace by singing Na'aseh Shalom.
Na'aseh Shalom ba'olam, Na'aseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom. Na'aseh Shalom ba'olam, Na'aseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom. Na'aseh Shalom, Na'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh Shalom, Na'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh Shalom, Na'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh Shalom, Na'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh Shalom, Na'aseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam.
I'm what euphemistically we call a professional Jew. And so I'm prone to thinking about big Jewish ideas, and I guess you could put a trademark logo next to that phrase, big Jewish ideas. And adaptation's a big piece of Jewish history. We get the Judaisms we know today as a result of adaptation, change made in response to circumstances. And there are tons of little points in history that I could point to for examples of Jewish adaptation over the years. Action in response to sets of ideas is a big part of what makes each variation of Judaism what it is. And there's a line, and it's a hard one to identify until sometimes you've crossed it, when something is adapted so far that it's kind of no longer the thing it started as. And I wonder, as we gather to mark Yom Kippur, whether the idea of teshuvah, the idea of answering for the consequences of our bad actions, is part of the high holidays, and it isn't something that maybe hasn't been stretched too far in adapting to American culture. And granted that this seems like a weird place for a humanistic rabbi to try to draw a line in the sand, but bear with me. On Rosh Hashanah, I talked about Rabbi Twitter and Jewish Twitter, Twitter to the cool kids, and how they got a little punchy around Rosh Hashanah this year as people were starting to get a little tired of the Zoom stuff and get a little tired of the video stuff and getting a little tired of Delta and all of these things that were going on that made it harder to get ready for the high holidays. And so things got punchy. And another thing that's a feature of the Jewish New Year on Twitter and those places these days is like the blanket apology. So this is something that shows up on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram, and it probably shows up on TikTok, but I don't really use TikTok. And it goes something like this. Somebody puts up a post and it'll say, "To those that I may have wronged, I ask for your forgiveness. For those I may have helped, I wish I could have done more. For the many I neglected to help, I am truly sorry. To those who helped me, I am deeply grateful." And then there are the inevitable subtweets. And if you've never heard that term, a subtweet is a tweet or a Facebook post or something that people make in response to somebody else's Facebook post, but they don't quote the other post or the other tweet. They're kind of responding to it a little subtly, maybe, making it a little hard unless you know what they're responding to know what they're responding to. And so you get those Facebook posts and Twitter tweets and all those things that say stuff like, "I'm sorry," in this blanket way, and then you get the inevitable subtweets back, and the subtweets say, "I hate mass apologies on Erev Yom Kippur, so I won't post one. I'll say this, I'm trying, I continue to try, you should too." Or they say something like that. And you can see why the mass apology can rankle. Isn't the point of a good apology that we acknowledge we've hurt another person, we identify the thing we've done wrong, we acknowledge that we understand we did something wrong, and that's it? No consequences, no, "I'm sorry I didn't help more," but we clearly identify to the person we've hurt the thing we did. How is, "I may have wronged you, but I don't know what it was, and I'm not going to invest too much effort to figure it out. Please forgive me. Okay, thanks, bye," an actual apology? It isn't. And it's not enough to make that kind of apology. If you were to see that someone had posted something like that and then didn't come around to apologize to you after they had hurt you, what would you think? So why do people do this? And I think American culture can make us suckers for notions like clean breaks, clean consciences, and clean slates. This week, I've seen multiple essays by prominent American rabbis talking about how Yom Kippur and or Teshuvah, right, that grappling with our past and answering for the things we've done, how that's kind of an erasure of the past. Rabbi Michael Strassfeld, whom you may know best as the author of the first Jewish catalog, the second Jewish catalog, the third Jewish catalog, those Jewish DIY books that came out in the late 70s and early 80s, wrote in his weekly newsletter this past Monday that, quote, "Teshuvah is a radical freedom from the past." More prominent, maybe, is Rabbi David Wolpe, whose essay in the New York Times this past Sunday, "So You've Been Canceled," a Yom Kippur Atonement Guide, reminds readers that according to Jewish law, you're not supposed to bring up someone's sins after they've repented. Rabbi Wolpe goes on to point out that you're not supposed to remind someone of their sins, and having forgiven someone who has genuinely repented of their wrongdoing doesn't require letting that person back into your life. Now, I have to wonder about that. You don't let someone back into your life. How is that not sometimes reminding them of the thing they did that they've atoned for, that they've repented for? And this brings up all manner of questions for me. Wait, if you're supposed to treat someone who has truly repented and whom you've forgiven, and that's part of repenting fully, right, is going and seeking forgiveness, as though the past offense is gone, what's the rationale for saying you can't come back into my life? If you do that, have you actually forgiven the person? Are you really taking their repentance seriously? The picture is made a little more muddy even if you really go back and you read the sources that Rabbi Wolpe and Rabbi Strassfeld are working from as the foundation of the clean slate of Teshuvah. Because really the sources they rely on don't speak with one voice. Someone can repent and their repentance is complete and they shouldn't be reminded of their past, except, as Maimonides insists, you can't really have repented until you're placed in the same situation as before and you're able to avoid making the same error, not because you're afraid of punishment or of getting caught, but because you realize the thing you did was wrong, full stop. And there are things that people have done where the repentance isn't ever complete. So then, if all that's true, how do you apologize? And when, according to the rabbis, we're obliged not to mention someone's past to them, how does this all work? It's almost always true that when we go back into classic Jewish sources, we oversimplify things because we come to them with our modern mindset and we have a particular lens and a frame that we're looking at these sources for. And Rabbi Wolping is grappling in his essay with a friend who he says got canceled and deserved it. But now that he's done teshuvah, in Rabbi Wolpe's estimation, when is he rehabilitated and allowed to be uncanceled? And let's set aside for the moment that a lot of the assessment of who's really done teshuvah often really should be with the victim of the acts rather than the penitent's clergy person. There's not really an easy answer to, okay, when do you get to come back into the fold? I'm not going to hold forth on cancel culture and whether it's good or bad, and actually Rabbi Wolpe doesn't really do much of that either, that the cancel culture discussion is an entry into a more broad discussion of how Yom Kippur works, what teshuvah is about, what apology is about. But I want to suggest this. The truth is, we're not really ever done with the process of apology, and we're not really ever done with the process of forgiveness. And teshuvah doesn't ever really actually finish. Nothing about any of these processes really lets the past die, and yet that's what we imagine the clean slate means. The past is dead. It's gone. It's in the past. We're moving forward now, and we don't have to look back at that. But that can't really ever happen, because each of us are just walking balls of memory, and not even conscious memory. There are people who, never having personally experienced anti-Semitism in their lives, will see a report on the news about anti-Semitism and go looking for their passports. What is that about? Our ability to accurately, or even consistently, let alone accurately, reconstruct events that we personally experienced, eyewitness testimony, our ability to do that is famously bad, even as our emotional responses to those experiences often remain unchanged and close to the surface. What would it be like if we stopped trying to fit ourselves and this process that happens on Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur? What if we stopped trying to fit that to American culture's insistence that the past can actually be forgotten? What would it mean for our relationships with one another and families, and in schools and workplaces and congregations, and even our bridge and mahjong clubs? For that matter, what would it mean for all those easy-peasy Twitter apologies? It's easy to make all of this seem less complicated than it is, and some of that's because we're so prone to limiting even talking about these questions to these 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. But it's also because these are hard questions, full stop. And we don't spend the bulk of our time in a culture that's particularly good at hard questions, or even at paying attention to something for more than 24 hours in a news cycle. We're turning the corner in our service now, from memory to resolution, from examining the past to looking toward the future. As Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, which now calls itself institutionally Reconstructing Judaism, as Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan said, the past has a vote, not a veto. And he meant this in kind of an American way. Yes, the past has a vote. It's there, and we listen, but we don't let the past write the rules. I mean it to say this. The past has a vote. There aren't really many clean slates to be had, and our plans for the future need to remember what our pasts have been. The phrase Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, is an interesting one, in part because the word Kippur doesn't actually mean atonement exactly. So the word Kippur means, in its literal meaning, means to actually cover over something, to cover it up. And so there's some notion that the idea of atonement means covering over prior bad deeds so that they are not noticed or not taken notice of, that we consider them to have been past. But another piece of it is that we consider ourselves to be somewhat renewed. And so Yom Kippur is not simply about lamenting our past errors, but it's also about looking toward the future and figuring out ways to be better in the future, ways to do better in the future. And so we've remembered our past and we've dedicated ourselves to working in the memory of those who have gone before, but to do this as a community, we must work to reconcile our relationships with one another and the conflicts we find within ourselves. And we begin that process by acknowledging not only that we hope for better, but that we can do better and have done better in the past. And so we share first the second half of the poem, Because. Because I'm in pain, because I wish I could undo it, because I hurt him, because I lost her trust, because I let them down, because I was self-destructive, because I was foolish, because I'm ashamed, because that's not who I am, because that's not who I want to be, because I want to be forgiven. And that's the rationale for a lot of the work of atonement, a lot of the work of reconciliation that we engage in on Yom Kippur, is a recognition that we've done things we wish we didn't do. And we think that's not who I am, or we think that that's not who we want to be. And it's hard to accept the idea that I did that, because that's not who we want to be when we see that we've done something wrong. We acknowledge that this is not the person we want to be. This is not what we want to be known for. And so the challenge becomes, what do you do to address that? And it's traditional that the song Avinu Malkeinu that appears in many Macharim, the special prayer books that are used on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's traditional that Avinu Malkeinu is sung a number of times during the high holidays. And so we follow that practice today and repeat our singing of Tzrichim Anachnu, our Avinu Malkeinu adaptation here, led by the Machar choir. Tzrichim Anachnu says we need to purify our hearts, for we have not done enough good deeds. And so we're here for Yom Kippur in part because we do see the need to purify our hearts, but we have to remember that we not only need to do this, but it's not necessarily out of reach, that we can do this, that we can do better. And so we share this reading from Mishkan HaNefesh for Yom Kippur. Let us affirm the good we have done. Let us acknowledge our acts of healing and repair, for the good we have done by acting with restraint and self-control, through acts of generosity and compassion, by offering children our love and support, through acts of friendship and hospitality, by keeping promises and honoring commitments, through the work of our hands and by serving others, by caring for the earth and sustaining its creatures, by housing the homeless, feeding the hungry, and welcoming the stranger, through acts of civic engagement and tikkun olam. All these acts have brought light and healing into the world, and may these acts inspire us to renew our efforts in the year to come. It's easy to consider what we've done wrong in the past and think that that's what we are stuck doing again in the future, but we also should look at our past actions and realize that there have been positive things we've done as well, and use those as encouragement to do more in the future. We share as well this litany of atonement adapted from a poem by the Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference, for each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, for each time we have struck out in anger without justice or cause, for each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, we forgive each other and ourselves. We begin again in love. For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone, for falling short of admonitions of the Spirit, for losing sight of our unity, for those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, that have fueled the illusion of separateness. We forgive each other and ourselves. We begin again in love. And what we hope ultimately is that righteousness, the doing of good things, allows us to flourish, and then allows us as righteous people to flourish as well. And so we share the song Sadiq Katamar, adapted from Psalm 92. The Hebrew of the song translates to, "The righteous will flourish like the date palm, grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in our world, they will blossom in the courtyards of our neighborhoods. They will bear fruit in their old age. They will be green and fresh, saying there are many paths, and my path is filled with love." Part of the process of Yom Kippur is committing to work for peace. The world is never as peaceful as it should be. It is never as peaceful as we need it to be. It is certainly never as peaceful as people deserve for it to be. And so we spend a little bit of extra time focusing on the need to work for peace. And we start with a reading from the founder of humanistic Judaism, Rabbi Sherwin Wein. Peace is more than an ideal. It's an achievement. There is no divine power that will give it to us for nothing. There are no laws of history that will guarantee its arrival. Peace is hard work. The forces of war and violence are very strong in our world. They hide in the deep unconscious of our mind. They attach themselves to personal greed. They find a friend in the lust for power. Too often our mouth prefers peace, but our behavior prefers war. We praise love and harmony, but we indulge hate and hostility. We endorse kindness, but we subsidize cruelty. We have to work for peace in the same way we work for a living. In the age of nuclear destruction, it may be even more important. We share as well this passage from Yitzchak Rabin, 30743. I, serial number 30743, Lieutenant General in Reserves Yitzchak Rabin, a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces and in the Army of Peace, I, who have sent armies into fire and soldiers to their death, say today we sail onto a war which has no casualties, no wounded, no blood nor suffering. It is the only war which is a pleasure to participate in, the war for peace. As we approach the end of our Yom Kippur Day service, we resolve to take action. Now is the time to do what we need to do. Now is the time to think about our lives, to think about our behavior, to think about the people we admire and love. And we call upon the shofar to sound out its blast of tekiah. Now is the time to gather our strength, to deepen our understanding, to discover our power. Now is the time to choose first things first, to place our family, our education, and our health above mere fun and play. And we call upon the shofar to sound the broken notes of Shavarim. Now is the time to become the masters of our lives and to rule our feelings. Now is the time to discover our excuses and to take responsibility for all that we do. And we call upon the shofar to remind us of our brokenness, to alert us to our brokenness with the broken tones of teruah. Let us say, we will be honest about our behavior. We will protect our family. We will make learning important. We will guard our health. We will control our feelings. We will take responsibility for all that we do. And we close our Yom Kippur service with one final long blast from the shofar to awaken us to the work that looks forward to the coming year, and call upon the shofar to sound out Tekiah Gedolah. Thank you for joining us for our Yom Kippur 2021 Jewish calendar year 5782 online service. If you look at our YouTube page, you'll find that there are other programs that you are free to access and to take advantage of as suit you and as serve your needs in the coming year. Shana Tova.